They say the cross protects us. They never tell you what happens when it bleeds. I was standing in the old chapel of the Madonna del Divino Amore, just outside Rome. The priests had already left, declaring the ritual complete. The tourists would never know what happened here. Not tomorrow, not ever. Only we would see it. Only we would clean what remained. The crucifix on the altar did not hang still. It trembled as if caught in a breath no one was exhaling. A dark line appeared at the base of Christ's feet. At first, I thought it was candle wax melted and sliding down the wood. Then, the smell hit me. Not wax, not incense, blood, thick, black. Each drop fell heavy on the marble below, hissing when it touched stone. Smoke curled upward, sharp with sulfur. It did not spread like liquid should. It burned like oil on fire, but without flame. Beside it, the ashes on the altar whispered. That's the only word I have for it. They made a sound, faint but constant, like hot coals breathing. I knew Rule 1 without speaking it. Never touch the ashes. I kept my hands at my side. The air pressed down, heavier than it should be in an empty chapel. My lungs felt smaller, like every breath had to fight through someone else's weight. I focused on the sound of my boots against the stone floor. Slow, measured, too loud in the silence. The light was wrong too. The candles flickered, but not in rhythm with the draft. Their glow bent around the crucifix, shadows falling against the wall in the wrong direction. I saw my own silhouette stretch thin and vanish, while the crucifix itself cast a shadow that moved as if alive. It leaned left, then right, like a pendulum that had forgotten how to stop. Rebecca whispered a prayer behind me. Her words broke against the air like chalk on stone. Reyes shifted, the steel of his belt scraping, and Donati's voice cut low, almost swallowed by the room itself. That's not supposed to happen. I didn't answer. My throat was too dry and nothing useful could have been said. I only watched. Because when the cross bleeds, there is no fixing, no cleaning, no holy water strong enough to cover what it means. There's only the record of what you saw, the silence you keep, and the smell you will never forget. I'm writing it now, but even here, the scent lingers, ash and blood and sulfur. I still feel it clinging to my skin. I still hear the hiss of it burning, and I wonder every time if the bleeding ever really stopped, or if it only waits for us to come back. I never planned to end up in Rome. I never planned to work for the church. People like me don't usually get invitations from God. We get warnings, we get scars, we get silence. Before all this, my work was different, but the same. A cleanup man. Not for priests, for cartels. In Los Angeles, in Tijuana, sometimes farther south in Juarez. They didn't call us cleaners. They didn't call us anything. They just handed cash and expected the world to forget what had happened. And I was good at making the world forget. Gunshots turned into robberies gone wrong, executions rewritten as traffic accidents, burned houses recorded as faulty wiring. I thought I was invisible. I thought I was untouchable. Until one night, the job sent me to a house I recognized before I even stepped inside. My friend's house. My closest friend since childhood, his wife, his children, all gone, butchered because someone in the cartel owed someone else a message, and they sent me to erase it. I stood in that kitchen for hours, staring at the blood that no detergent could cover. I knew exactly what they expected me to do, and I couldn't do it. That was the night I walked away. Not because I grew a conscience too late, but because every wall, every chair, every face of that house told me I wasn't fixing stories anymore. I was burying them alive. After that, I disappeared. Or at least I tried to. Vatican found me. Or maybe they had been watching long before. They never explained how they knew, only that they needed someone who could erase what others must never see. Not drug wars this time, not gang assassinations, something older, something worse. They didn't promise redemption. They offered a place where my skills would still be useful. And I accepted, because I had nothing left to refuse. Now my nights are here, in marble halls that tourists never enter, in rooms painted with saints that watch silently from the walls. Sala Regia inside the Apostolic Palace. It looks like gold and glory to the pilgrims outside, but at midnight it feels more like a tomb. This is where we meet before every assignment. No public records, no signatures, no names on paper. Reyes is already there when I arrive. Commander Reyes, Swiss Guard liaison. His uniform fits like a second skin, ironed to perfection. His voice cuts short. "You're late." I don't argue. He doesn't want reasons. He wants silence and discipline. Rebecca sits a little farther back, her hands folded tight around a rosary. Sister Rebecca has a face that never stops praying, even when her lips do. She nods at me. No smile, just acknowledgement. She's the one who says prayers over bodies when we close the bags. Some say it comforts the dead. I think it comforts her more. Jordan leans against the far wall. He never sits if he can help it. His arms crossed, eyes sharp, always looking for cracks. He doesn't trust anyone, least of all the people he works with. "Another job," he mutters. "Same pattern." He doesn't ask questions. He makes statements like he's already figured it out. Donati shifts nervously in the corner. Newest recruit, his boots too clean, his eyes too wide. He hasn't seen enough yet to know what fear really looks like. That will change. It always changes. Then the door opens and Monsignor Frank enters. He doesn't wear gold or red. Just plain black with a thin silver cross that glints under the chandeliers. His presence silences the room without effort. "We begin," he says. His Italian is flawless, but his English sharper. He speaks for both at once, never wasting a word. He doesn't hand out files. He doesn't show us maps. He speaks the same way every time, with the rules. "The first rule," he begins, voice steady as stone. "Never touch the ashes on the altar. They are not what they appear to be." The second rule: if you hear a child crying inside the chapel, leave the room. Do not search. No child has ever survived. The third rule: do not open the crypt doors. No matter who calls from inside, the voices are never theirs. The fourth rule: keep the crucifix in your line of sight at all times. If it shifts, if it turns, if it disappears, you are already too late. The fifth rule: if a member of the team laughs without reason, burn the body immediately. Do not speak to them. Do not hesitate. The words hang heavy in the air. They always do. Because they're not abstract. They're not metaphors. We've all seen them broken, and we've all seen the cost. Donati swallows hard. Jordan's mouth twitches like he wants to laugh but doesn't. Reyes just keeps his eyes on the table. Rebecca closes hers in prayer. I don't write the rules down. None of us do. They're not for paper. They're for memory, for survival. And they're not suggestions. They're lines between life and something worse. We don't question the rules. We don't break them. We survive by them. Or we end by them. Frank closes his eyes for a moment, like a man reciting scripture that hurts to speak. Then he nods. The meeting is over. No minutes recorded. No signatures filed. Just silence. And the weight of 5 rules that feel heavier than the stones above our heads. Sometimes I sit through these meetings and wonder if anyone else feels what I feel. The silence is so heavy it's almost a sound. You can hear the saints painted on the walls judging you. You can feel centuries of secrets pressing down. Sala Regia is supposed to be glory. Tonight it feels like judgment. Judgment I can't escape. When I hear the rules spoken aloud, I remember the rules I once broke, back in America, back in that house. No one had to tell me not to touch the ashes then. I already touched enough blood. No one had to warn me about voices from behind doors. I already heard the last words of a family begging me to explain why. No one had to remind me not to laugh. I never laugh, not anymore. I'm not sure why they trust me to keep their secrets. Maybe because they know I can't carry my own. Or maybe because they know I'll do what I'm told, even if it breaks me. Some men find faith. Some men find redemption. I found rules. And in this place, rules are the only things that keep you alive. Outside Sala Regia, tourists tomorrow will walk past frescoes and tapestries. They will hear stories of glory. They will not know this room ever held anything but art. And that's the point. Secrets stay secret, even from God himself. We went back before dawn, when the road out of Rome still felt empty and the air held the night in place. Clean-up orders, simple, precise, final, bag the remains, seal the relics, neutralize the altar. Photograph nothing, record nothing that could outlive us. That's the line. I follow lines. The chapel door yielded under Reyes's hand, hinges dragging stone. The candles we'd left dying were still alive, thin and stubborn, flames leaning as if some breath we couldn't see pressed from the side. I entered last, not for fear, because rooms speak if you let them. I clicked the recorder in my pocket, not for evidence, for remembering. Entry, I whispered. Madonna del Divino Amore, post-ritual cleanup. The altar looked the same, not the same. The crucifix hung straight. The shadow behind it did not. It fell at an angle that argued with the candles. I noted it and said nothing. You don't lead with shadows. You lead with what your hands can prove. Positions, Reyes said. He never raises his voice. Rebecca moved to the priest who'd led the rite. He lay where he'd fallen, arms drawn toward the altar, fingers folded into something between prayer and a fist. Proceeding, she said. She unfastened the canvas bag and laid it out. The rosary at her wrist clicked softly. Jordan crossed to the reliquary cabinet. 3 intact, he said. 4th is new. Stamp's wrong. He glanced over with a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. I approached the altar. The ashes remained in a dark ring, wet where nothing wet should be. The surface pulsed, almost invisible, like breath under a thin cloth. Heat lifted from it without flame. Temperature elevated, I said for the recorder. Rule 1 lived in my hands. I kept distance. Donati hovered at the door. 1 step in, 1 step out. He was listening more than looking. Do you hear that? He asked. Reyes didn't answer. The boy stepped farther in. Commander, do you hear it? What? Reyes said. A child, Donati said, crying. The word settled like dust. Rebecca paused. The sound reached us, thin, exhausted, not sobbing, not a scream, a cry, a breath, a second cry. It filled rafters without echo. Rule 2, I said. If you hear a child crying inside the chapel, leave the room. Donati looked at me, then at the side door to the crypt stairs. He took a step. Maybe someone's in there, he said. Maybe. Rule 3, Reyes cut him off. Do not open the crypt doors. No matter who calls from inside. His eyes stayed on Donati. Back. The cry came again, closer, softer, like it had stepped toward us without moving. The candles bent harder. The crucifix shadow widened, then thinned, as if the figure turned and turned back while the wood didn't move at all. The recorder thumped against my ribs. We finish and we go, Reyes said. Rebecca. She began the words she always used. Her voice stayed even, but the vowels frayed in the air as if the room disliked their shape. The crucifix trembled. A shiver, nothing more. The right arm caught a line of candlelight and threw it the wrong way. Eyes on the cross, I said. Rule 4. Jordan raised the new seal to the light. Black dust came away on his nail, fine and oily. He sniffed, winced. Not ink. The ashes hissed. Sulfur thickened. I took half a step back. "Do not touch the altar," I said. "Do not touch the ashes." The cry rose from beneath us, not from walls now, from stone. Donati drifted toward the side door. "I know," he said. "I know the rule. I know." His hands shook. "What if this time?" "There is no this time," Reyes said. Rebecca lifted the priest's shoulders. The crucifix rattled, small, like a building settling, except buildings don't settle in sealed rooms. The shadow behind the cross didn't just move, it turned its head. I saw it. I know what I saw. "I wanted to believe the priest had finished the job," I said for the recorder, but I knew what I saw. Jordan's chuckle was one short exhale. "Maybe it's mocking us," he said. I watched the altar. The ring of ash tightened, loosened. The hiss rose to a whistle and fell back to breath. Under the sulfur came a sweet note, spoiled fruit sweet. "Finish the bag," Reyes said. "We are not staying." Rebecca nodded. The zipper moved, teeth closing slow, each notch too loud. Donati flinched. "Stop moving," Reyes said. The cry below softened for one long second, almost a cooing. I kept my eyes on the cross. "Seal," Jordan said. He pressed the false stamp to the fourth reliquary. Black dust smeared into shapes like letters that weren't letters. He lifted it to the flame. The dust writhed. "Not ink," he said again. The crucifix swung, an inch left, an inch right, a slow pendulum that ignored air. The shadow turned away from us. Rebecca's prayer stopped mid-breath. "Eyes on the crucifix," I said. Rule 4. Donati reached for the handle. "It's a baby," he said. "I can hear how it breathes." I caught his wrist. "Rule 3, I said. "Do not open the crypt doors, no matter who calls from inside." I held his eyes. The voices are never theirs. He stared like he might fight me. The cry cut my ear. He looked away. I pulled him back. "Stand with Reyes," I said. "Bag sealed," Rebecca said. She closed the canvas over the priest's face and crossed herself. Jordan rubbed the dust between thumb and finger. "You feel that?" he asked. He wiped his palm on his pants. The smear stayed wet. "Jordan," Reyes said. "Working," Jordan said. He set the reliquaries in the case and latched it. The latch clicked. A knock answered from beneath the floor, soft, polite. Donati made a sound men don't admit later. Rebecca's beads creaked. "Time," Reyes said. "We leave. We had the body. We had the relics. We had our lives." I stepped to the altar once more. The dried black at Christ's feet looked wet again, as if the wood sweated. A drop gathered at the nail, fell to marble. I waited for a hiss. There was none. The stone swallowed it. "Out," Reyes said. He set a hand on Donati's shoulder. From below, a word rose, not a child's word. "Pater," it said. Father, not plea, greeting. The floor tightened as if it had lungs. The candles leaned in unison, all light drawn toward a mouth we couldn't see. Rebecca looked at me. "We can't leave it," she said. "We can't leave a voice like that beneath the church." "You know the rule," I said. "We don't open doors." Jordan laughed, a single clean note that belonged to daylight, not here. He nodded at the altar where the ash ring pulled tight, loosened, formed a small mouth opening and closing. "It doesn't need doors," he said. "Out," Reyes said again. "Now." We moved without hurry. Donati kept glancing at the side door. Rebecca watched the crucifix. Jordan rubbed his pocket like he was taming something inside it. I kept the recorder against my chest and counted breaths. At the threshold, I looked back. The cross was still. The shadow faced us again. For a second, I thought it tilted its head, not like wood bothered by air, but like a face considering. Outside, the air was cooler than it should be before dawn, smelling of storm without rain. The world should have begun again. Engines, shutters, birds. Instead, everything held breath. Rebecca shut the van's doors on the bag. Reyes checked the case twice. "Maybe we should have opened it," Jordan said. "No," I said. "Because Rule 3 says so?" Because the voices are never theirs, I said. We drove toward the walls in silence. Rebecca ran her fingers over the beads. Donati stared at his hands. Reyes drove as if the road owed him obedience. I kept my hand on the recorder and thought about the shadow turning away, about the word from below, about ash that breathed. In America, rooms tell you what men did. Here, rooms tell you what they want. This chapel didn't want to talk. It wanted us to listen. At the service gate, the bells began, far and thin. We pulled into the quiet belly of the apostolic palace. "Report," Reyes said when the engine stopped. "We followed procedure," Rebecca said. "Sealed, bagged." "Relics," Jordan said. "3 authentic, 1 uncertain, stamp contamination." I said my part. "Residual activity at the altar, ashes not inert, shadow inconsistency behind crucifix, audible child cry from crypt, word spoken, pater. Rules 2 and 3 upheld." Reyes nodded once, his eyes on Donati. "Next time you move on a door, I break your fingers," he said. "You live because you obey." "Yes, sir," Donati said. We dispersed with the same quiet we'd arrived. The pages would stay clean. That's how it works. But the world had shifted a fraction toward a shape I don't like. And I knew we weren't finished with that chapel, or with whatever learned to cry beneath it and learned a word too old for a child to know. I wanted to believe the priests had finished the job. I wanted to believe we were closing the book. But I knew what I saw, and I knew what I heard. And both were now inside the walls with us, whether we wrote them down or not. Archivum Apostolicum Vaticanum. The air inside the vaults never changes. Cold, dry, heavy with the smell of leather and dust, like centuries themselves had been pressed into paper. I walked the aisles with gloves, lamp, and the sound of my own breath. We had orders to check records on ritual continuity. Officially. Unofficially, I needed to see for myself what the church buried. I found the file in a drawer, misfiled on purpose, the spine without date. Inside, reports in Latin and English. My lamp caught a line written in 1893. "We never banish it. We only delay it." Not a metaphor, not poetry. A report signed by hands long dead. I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. Banishing was never real. Delay was all we ever managed. Frank was waiting when I left the stacks. Monsignor Frank always knew where I was. He motioned me into a side chamber, a vault with a single table. He did not sit. He began speaking like a man reciting something memorized. "You think exorcism is conquest," he said. "It never was. The rites you witness are for the eyes of the world. Faith requires theater. People must believe evil is cast out. In truth, we only move it. We break its attachment and force it into the air, where it seeks again. Always a new host, always a new skin. What you cleaned last night was not victory, it was transfer." I stared at him. "Then why lie? Why tell us we end anything?" "Because faith cannot endure truth," Frank said. His voice was low but sharp. "Faith isn't broken by violence, it's broken by lies, yet lies are the only thing that keep it alive." He leaned closer. "You clean bodies, I clean belief. We are both janitors of a house already on fire." I wanted to argue, but I remembered the word in the crypt, pater, spoken not by a child, but by something old, something that had already chosen its next host. Days later, the Vatican grew sick. Quiet at first. A priest collapsed during liturgy, his lips cracked, blood black on his tongue. Another stumbled in the courtyard, eyes rolled white, speaking nothing but syllables that scraped the air. Rumors spread fast. The papers outside wrote of a strange illness confined to clerics. Pilgrims were turned away. Guards said plague. We knew better. In the refectory, 3 men vomited at once, streams of tar-colored bile staining the tiles. Their screams were not their own. One guard said it sounded like laughter played backward. By nightfall, the infirmary overflowed. The stench of iron and rot clung to the air. Rebecca tried to help, whispering prayers over the sick. Some clawed at her habit, begging her to kill them. Others only stared with eyes washed white, as if no soul lived behind. And then there was Jordan. At first he only seemed tired, distracted, but in the sala regia, while reports of the illness were being discussed, I caught his reflection in the marble floor. His eyes were not his own, too bright, too wide, and when he blinked, the reflection did not blink back. He rubbed his palms together as if warming them at a fire no one else could see. Once, during the briefing, he muttered something under his breath in a language I did not recognize. The syllables were sharp like broken glass. Rebecca leaned toward him. "What did you say?" He smiled faintly. The kind of smile you see on statues eroded by centuries. "Nothing," he said. But his teeth were too tight around the word, as if he was holding back more. Later that evening, I passed him alone in the corridor near the bronze doors. He stood facing the wall, whispering. His breath fogged the surface, though the air was warm. When I asked what he was doing, he turned and laughed softly, just one note, but it echoed too long in the stone. He walked away without another word. I thought I knew what broke faith, pain, death, horror. I was wrong. Faith isn't broken by violence, it's broken by lies. And I had just heard enough lies to damn every stone of this city. Frank called us together again in the archives. His face was drawn, his voice strained. "You see it now," he said. "The sickness is no sickness. It is occupation. Each body is tried, tested, discarded, until it finds one that pleases it. The records are clear. It does not stop until it has a seat of power, a throne. That is what it seeks." Reyes clenched his fists. "Then why do you keep the game going?" "Because if the world knew," Frank said, "if they saw that the cross bleeds but never heals, they would burn Rome themselves, and evil would not have to wait for us. It would be invited in." Donati's voice shook. "So what are we? Bait?" Frank did not answer. Silence was answer enough. Rebecca whispered prayers until her lips turned pale. Reyes turned away, grinding his jaw. Jordan only smiled again, faint and secret, as though he knew a joke the rest of us hadn't heard yet. He caught me watching and his eyes met mine, wide, endless, a void. And then he chuckled, almost kindly, like he pitied me for still hoping rules would matter. Reyes broke the silence first. "This is heresy," he said to Frank. "If what you say is true, then every rite, every record, every sermon is a lie." Frank's gaze did not falter. "It is survival." "No," Reyes snapped. His voice cut through the chamber. "It is fraud. You have us breaking our backs to obey rules, risking our lives to contain this, while you admit it cannot be contained." "And yet you are alive," Frank said calmly. "Alive because you followed those rules. Alive because you never knew how thin the veil truly was." I stepped forward before I could stop myself. Alive, yes. But for what? To serve a theater? To keep blood flowing in silence while the faithful kneel in ignorance? I slammed the folder on the table. How many have died in these walls while the world was told it was victory? Frank looked at me with eyes colder than the archive air. "Enough, and not enough. Both are true," Rebecca whispered. "Then we are already damned." Jordan laughed again, longer this time. It scraped like stone against stone. When he stopped, his grin stayed, stretched too long across his face. "Maybe damnation is the only truth left," he said. His voice was soft, but it filled the chamber like smoke. That was when one of the priests in the corner convulsed. His body arched, his jaw cracking. Black fluid spilled from his mouth and eyes until his skin sagged white and empty. The smell hit us all at once, sulfur and rot thick enough to choke. He collapsed onto the floor, twitching, dead but not at peace. The silence after was worse than the sound. Reyes reached for his weapon, then stopped, staring at Frank. "And still you ask us to obey?" Frank answered slowly, "Obedience is the only wall left between us and the flood." No one believed him, not anymore. I felt it in the air, heavier than dust. The truth was loose now, bleeding into us the way the sickness bled into Rome, and faith, once cracked, never seals again. St. Peter's Basilica Crypt. The stone beneath us sweated cold, the air carrying the weight of centuries. The chamber was sealed for us only, no pilgrims, no priests. A closed meeting, they called it. But I knew better. The Vatican was locking its infection deep underground, hoping the world above would keep singing hymns without knowing what rotted below. Jordan sat at the end of the table, silent at first, staring at his hands. Then the laughter came. Not sharp, not sudden, but building like pressure under a floorboard. When it broke, it filled the crypt. A sound not his, not human. He leaned back, shaking with it, then spoke in a voice I knew but should not have heard again. "Anders," he said, not in Jordan's tone. In the tone of a man I once called brother in Los Angeles. My friend whose house I had scrubbed clean of blood and bullet shells, whose children I had zipped into bags for a cartel paycheck. The voice mocked him perfectly. "You still carrying me, hermano?" I froze. The others did not understand. Only me. Only the demon would know that voice, those words. Reyes shouted, "Rule 5! His weapon rose. "Burn the body immediately." But we were too slow. The change was already upon him. Jordan's eyes rolled white, then black, then both at once. His spine arched, joints cracking loud in the crypt. The crucifix above the altar spun, wood shrieking against its hook, until Christ faced the wall, his back to us. Every mirror along the corridor split at once, fractures like veins racing across glass before shattering in a chorus of shards. Donati screamed as cuts striped his cheek. Rebecca clutched her beads, reciting prayers faster, words colliding with each other. The old loudspeakers hidden in the crypt walls, long dead with dust, crackled alive. Out poured the sound of children sobbing, dozens, hundreds, a choir of grief rising from iron throats. It shook the air until the marble groaned. Vatican bells rang above us, not for liturgy. An alarm. Tourists were ushered out with soft lies about structural issues. Doors locked. The city within the city sealed itself shut. Jordan rose, taller than he should have looked, arms trembling under the weight of something far older. His mouth opened, laughter spilling. "Do you feel it, Anders?" The voice switched again, my voice younger, scared, from years I thought buried. "Do you remember what you begged for in Juarez?" I staggered back. "Stop it." "Truth doesn't stop," the thing said through Jordan's mouth. "It only grows." The Swiss guards stormed in behind Cardinal Hudson. Their boots pounded, rifles raised. The cardinal's voice boomed, commanding Latin prayers. For a second, it almost felt like order might return. Then Jordan lifted a hand. The air bent. Rifles twisted in their grips like soft metal. Guards screamed as bones broke inside their armor. One fell. His chest caved inward as if pressed by an invisible hand. Another's helmet filled with blood until it spilled through the visor. Hudson raised his crucifix high. The demon laughed again. The crucifix in his hand bled from its seams, dark liquid streaming down his robes. He collapsed, eyes boiling white, his scream cut short as his ribs cracked outward like wings. Silence followed. Hudson was gone. Rebecca screamed prayers in Latin, her voice tearing raw. "Sancta Michael Arcangele, defenda nos in proelio." Her words bent mid-air, syllables reversing as if sucked back into her mouth. She kept chanting even as blood lined her lips. Donati cried out, clutching his ears, "Make it stop!" Then came the pounding, heavy, deliberate, from coffins sealed in niches that had not been opened in centuries. One knock, another, then a storm of fists slamming from the inside. Dust rained from the ceiling. Names carved into marble shook as if the dead beneath were demanding release. The walls began to sweat blood, thin rivulets at first, then streams running down saints carved into stone. Their faces wept red. The floor turned slick beneath our boots. My recorder clicked useless in my pocket. Too much, too fast. Handheld vision, cut, blur. Reframe. Reyes fired. Bullets tore across Jordan's chest but vanished like stones thrown into water. His laughter only grew, layered now, carrying my voice, my friends, even Donati's cries. It was every memory weaponized, every weakness dragged out and dressed in blood. I pushed forward, against sense, against fear. The demon looked straight at me. Jordan's face rippled, shifting. For a moment, it was my friend's face, eyes pleading, mouth forming my name. Then, it split wide into something toothless and infinite. The sound that followed was neither laugh nor scream. It was both. Rebecca dropped to her knees, shouting prayers louder, tearing her throat until it bled. Donati covered his face, sobbing. Reyes bellowed commands no one could follow. The chamber pulsed with red light as if every torch in the basilica had ignited below ground. I reached Jordan, or what was left of him. His body burned cold against my grip, veins pulsing black beneath his skin. He whispered again, soft, almost tender. "You should have burned me long ago." Then his mouth opened wider than bone should allow, and a torrent of ash and blood poured forth, swallowing the air with sulfur. I don't remember if I screamed. I remember the mirrors, still shattering though none were left. I remember the floor trembling with fists of the dead. I remember the blood rising around our ankles like tide. And above all, the sound of children crying through broken speakers, endless, without breath. We were drowning in voices. I thought rules could hold. I thought obedience had weight. But in the crypt, all rules failed. We were not soldiers. We were not believers. We were prey in a cage already opened, and the thing wearing Jordan's skin was only beginning. Vatican City stood silent behind its walls. No bells rang for Mass. No pilgrims crowded the square. The official statement went out within hours. An electrical fire in the basilica's lower chambers contained swiftly, no casualties reported. The lie slid easily across papers, screens, lips. Rome nodded and turned away. The world slept again. I walked alone through Campo Santo Teutonico, the cemetery few tourists know exists, a garden of stone within the Vatican's shadow. The soil here's held centuries of priests, guards, servants. I traced the rows slowly, the quiet broken only by the rustle of cypress in the wind. I was still alive. That was supposed to mean something. It didn't. Some of the graves bore new marks, fresh cuts in marble where names once were, scraped smooth until only blank stone remained. I stopped and ran my hand across one. It belonged to a man I'd spoken to 3 days earlier. Now he was nameless, erased not only from life but from memory. The Vatican had buried him twice, once in the ground, once in silence. Faith breaks quietly, not with fire, not with blood, but with silence and secrets. My boots carried dust from the crypt even here. Ash clung to my coat, black against black, as though the chamber wouldn't release me. I brushed at it. It smeared deeper. It wouldn't leave. Just like Juarez, just like every room I'd ever scrubbed. You don't walk away clean, not from men, not from demons, not from lies. The sky over St. Peter's looked unchanged. Blue for the pilgrims outside, endless and forgiving. But I felt the shadow still moving beneath it, hunting a stronger host, waiting for another stage. Frank hadn't spoken since the crypt. Reyes had left without a word. Rebecca muttered prayers until her voice cracked. Donati looked like a boy who'd aged 50 years overnight. None of us were the same men and women who entered. Maybe none of us survived, not in truth. I passed a statue of the Virgin, her stone eyes downcast. A streak of soot marked her cheek. No one would mention it. Tomorrow it'd be washed clean, like the graves, like the walls, like us. That's how Rome survives, by erasing. I kept walking. Every step felt like a trespass in a city that no longer wanted me. In the days that followed, the cleaning began. Crews in white vestments carried brushes and cloths as if preparing for ritual, but they were janitors in disguise. They scrubbed at walls, still darkened by smoke that had no fire. They polished marble floors where blood had seeped until the stone reflected the ceiling again. They climbed ladders to wash soot from statues, dipping sponges into holy water that masked only the surface. Even the vestments of the Swiss guard were replaced. The stained fabrics burned quietly behind the walls. Pilgrims returned by the week's end. They walked the square, lifted cameras, bought trinkets. They saw nothing. They smelled nothing. They prayed beneath frescoes scrubbed clean of shadow. Their voices rose in hymns while ours had been silenced. That's the Vatican's greatest art. Not painting, not architecture, but erasure. A perfection of forgetting. I thought I could carry it. Rules, lies, all of it. But silence weighs more than screams. You can bury a man. You can bury a truth. But both push back from the ground eventually. And when they rise, they don't forgive. The ash on my coat shifted in the breeze. For a moment, I thought I saw it breathe. I kept walking, slower, toward gates that no longer looked like salvation, toward streets that pretended nothing had burned. The Vatican would endure. But faith, my faith, was gone. I never prayed again after that night, not because I stopped believing in evil, but because I knew exactly where it lived, and it wore silence better than any robe or crown ever could. I kept the recorder on long after the others stopped speaking. Empty rooms have their own voices. You just have to wait for them. And I've waited too long already. The rules are worse than death, and if you think the priests end it with holy water and prayers, you don't know the Vatican. You don't want to know. Exorcism's a stage performance, a curtain drawn for the faithful. Behind it, there are only transfers, only delays, never endings, never mercy. I walk streets filled with pilgrims who smile at painted ceilings, who whisper prayers into marble that's already drunk too much blood. They think this city's eternal. They think its stones are holy. But I know what clings beneath them. I know what bleeds behind the plaster and what hides under robes that look clean only because they were washed in silence. Rome survives by forgetting. And forgetting's its darkest sacrament. I tell myself I survived, that I'm still Anders, that the thing we fought in the crypt's gone, locked away in some other shadow. But survival isn't the same as freedom. I feel the ash still on my coat, no matter how many times I've burned it. I hear echoes of Jordan's laughter in my own breath when I wake at night. And sometimes, when I look into the mirror, I think the reflection lags a second too long before it follows me. There are nights when the rules repeat themselves in my head, louder than prayers ever did. Never touch the ashes. Leave if you hear the crying. Don't open the crypt. Keep the crucifix in sight. Burn the body. They're less like warnings now, more like invitations, like doors waiting for me to knock. I used to believe silence was safety, that secrets kept evil chained. Now I know silence is its language. The quieter the Vatican speaks, the closer the demon is. And sometimes, I wonder if it's me, because lies are never buried. They shift underfoot like ash. They rise in the breath you can't control. I carry the silence now, heavier than any corpse I ever sealed. Maybe that's how it moves, by turning survivors into hosts, by teaching us to guard its secrets better than any priest. I don't know when it began. I don't know if it ever ends. I leave the recorder running when I sleep. One day, if you find this tape, maybe you'll hear what I hear. Maybe you'll believe what they erased, or maybe you'll join them in silence. That's the only ending left, and it isn't an ending at all.